step is you go to from table slash range. Okay, so you go to from table slash range. That means you put your cursor over here. It depends if you want to highlight as well. So the first step is you click data. The second step is you go to get and transform data. And then the third step is you click from table slash range. Okay, so if you can see from table slash range, maybe you can type number 4 in the chat box. Okay, so if you can see the icon from table slash range, maybe you can type number 4 in the chat box. Okay, so once you click from table range, you will notice that a window will pop out. Okay, so can you see this window? If you can see this window, maybe you can type number 5 in the chat box. Okay, so if you can see the window over here, maybe you can type number 5 in the chat box. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click OK. And then once I click OK, you will notice that you will be navigated to a Power Query editor. All right, as you can see over here, this thing called as Power Query editor. All right, so you will be navigated to Power Query editor. So with Power Query editor, what you can do? You can massage the data. What do I mean massage the data? For example, over here, I click the segment. Okay, if you notice, there's a column called segment. And in the segment, we have broadcasting, we have price, we have ticket attendance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to massage this data. That means I'm going to transform here. Can you see the transform ribbon? If you can see the transform ribbon, maybe you can type number 6 in the chat box. Okay, so once I go to transform ribbon, can you see the icon called pivot column? If you can see pivot column, maybe you can type number 7 in the chat box. All right, so once you click pivot column, of course, another window will appear. Okay, now when I click the pivot column, all right, so a window will appear over here. Okay, so this window will ask me where I'm going to put. So I'm going to put it on the currency. So the volume column will be currency because this is the value that I want to find. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press OK. So the moment I press OK, can you notice there are some difference? If you notice some difference, maybe you can type number 8 in the chat box. Okay, kepada kawan-kawan saya kat Malaysia, maybe you can type nombor 8. Okay, number 8 means 8 in Malay language. All right, so if you notice, initially, the data is in this format. Okay, data is in this format. That means we have year, we have segment, we have currency. But now, when I click pivot column, of course, the window will appear, one box will appear. I just click the box, I go to currency, and then I press OK. So now you notice that it is now in a different format, whereby the years appear in the rows and the broadcasting, price, ticket attendance appears in the column format. Okay, so if you notice, do you notice some difference? If you notice some difference, maybe you can type number 9. All right, so of course, this is something new for you, Power Query. That's like what I told you, Power Query is something that you can massage the data. You can change the template, you can change the format and so on. And of course, don't get confused. Why suddenly there's null over here? Normally, if there is no data, okay, if there is no data, then it will show null here. Go to replace, and I put here null, and I put here 0, and then I click OK. So now you notice it has changed from null to 0. So before I proceed, did you learn something new, my friends? If you learn something new, maybe you can type number 1 in the chat box. Okay, so basically this is Power Query, where you can massage the data, you can actually arrange the data, and then now when I press go to home, and then I close and load, so it will load accordingly. Okay, so now this is what the data looks like. So initially, this data is presented in year, segment, currency. But now you can put it in a way whereby you can put the broadcasting, price, ticket attendance appear in a column format. And then you go to table name. Okay, but before I proceed, I'll just explain. So in this data, we have state, we do have area, we do have the months, January, February, actual OPEX. If you're not from accounting and finance, OPEX means operating expenses. It is the expenses. You have the budget, budgeted one, you have staff costs and depreciation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this into a tabular format. So the first step is I go to data. The second step is I go to get and transform data. Can you see get and transform data? Maybe you can type number 1 if you can see get and transform data. Okay, and then once I go get and transform data, can you see the icon called from table / range? If you can see this icon, maybe you can type number 2 in the chat box, from table / range. Okay, so once you click this, you will notice that a small window will appear. Okay, can you see this window? Maybe you can type number 3 in the chat box if you can see this. Okay, so once you click this, you click OK, you will notice that you will be navigated, or in Malay I call it dipindahkan kepada Power Query Editor. You will be navigated to Power Query Editor. As you can see, of course, you have the state, you have area, you have January, and of course, all this data over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, maybe like what I told you, I'm going to right click this. Before I right click, maybe I'll explain. If you notice here, we have Perak, we have null, we have Selangor, we have null, we have Kedah, we have null. Okay, so I don't want this to be appear as null. So what I can do is I right click. When I right click, can you see the word call field? If you can see the word call field, maybe you can type number 4 in the chat box. Okay, so of course, fill down. There's a difference between fill up. I'm going to click fill down. So once I click fill down, you will notice that from null, it follows the upper data. Okay, so do you notice the difference? If you notice the difference, maybe you can type yes in the chat box. That means from null, it becomes fill down. All right. Okay, so the next step is, now you have already have the state. You also have the area. But you notice over here, we have January, it's a bit messy. It's a bit messed up. Okay, so what I can do is I go to transform and I transpose the data. Okay, so now I've actually transposed the data. If you notice, now you have in a different format, you have January, you have OPEX. Okay, so the same thing, right click, go to fill, and then fill down. So that now you have January and then February. So this thing also, you're going to do the same thing. You click here, right click, and then you go to fill, and then you fill down. So now you notice you do have the months, you have the type, whether it's actual or budget. So now I'm going to do the next step is I want to combine this. All right, so we have this column 1, column 2, column 3. So I'm going to combine this, or in Power Query, we call it as merge column. So can you see this merge column? If you can see merge column, maybe you can type number 6 in the checkbox. What do we mean by merge? Merge means they will amalgamate or they will combine. Okay, they will combine all these 3 columns into 1 column. So I'm going to merge column this, and then, okay, once I merge, a box will appear. So can you see this box? Maybe you can type number 7 if you can see the box. Okay, so once I click this, and then I'm going to click on maybe semicolon. Okay, semicolon, and then I press OK. So once I click semicolon, you will notice that January, semicolon, actual staff cost. January, semicolon, OPEX, depreciation. Can you see the difference? Maybe you can just type number 8 if you can see the difference. That means it has been merged. The column has been merged. All right. So the next step is what I'm going to do is I also want to transpose the data. Okay, again, I'm going to transpose. So now the data, now you have already merged here. Okay, the next step is I'm going to also merge this. I'm going to merge the state and also area. Okay, I'm going to merge this as well. So I'm going to go here. Okay, and I want to just merge. If you don't want to merge, so it's up to you, but I'll just merge. I'm going to go to semicolon and then I'm press OK. So now I'm going to merge this. Okay, so if you notice, now you have state, you have January OPEX, okay, and you have subsequent until February. So if you remember earlier, I did taught you on use first row as header. Okay, for those who come late, it's okay, I can teach you again. Use first row as header means, now if you notice, now we do have this column called merge, column 3, column 4, column 5. And if you notice this first row, the name is state, January actual, and then you have February. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the first row as header. So I'm going to click this and I click here. So now you notice that the state, and then you have January, you have all these combined. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to click this. and I'm going to go to the right hand side until here, and I press shift button. So that means all the data is highlighted. So once all the data is highlighted, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to transform, and I'm going to go to unpivot column. Okay, so now you have this, you have the state, you have the area, you have the months, you have the actual, and then you have the staff cost. All right, so next step is I'm going to split this. So I just click the column. Can you see a split column icon over here? Maybe you can just type number 8 if you can see this. Right, so split column, and then you go by delimiter. Why delimiter? So you click this delimiter, and then of course I just go okay, and then there you go. So that means it splits by para and also epo. And then the same thing, I just click this, I split column by delimiter, and then semicolon, I press okay. So now you notice that you have the state, you have the area, you have the months, you have the actual and budget OPEX, you also have the type of expenses, you have the value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this. Maybe I'll just name this as state. I'm going to name this as area, and I'm going to name this as months. This is as type. This is the items. And then this is, it's up to you. If you want to put Indian currency, you can put Indian currency, Indian rupees. If you want to put Ringgit Malaysia, you can put Ringgit Malaysia as well. Okay, so now this is your data, and then you go to home, and you go to close and load to. All right. So originally your data is in this format, but now you notice that this data is now appear in a different format. Okay, so do you notice there's something different? If you have noticed something different, maybe you can type yes in the chat box. Okay, so maybe this is the initial data. Initial data, you have the state. If you remember just now, you have the state, you have the area, and then this appears in a tabular format. It's in a different format. But now you notice that in this table 10, it appears in a different column for about 6 different columns. That means you have the state, area, months, type, items, and RM.